All right, go ahead, Morgan.
Okay, so my practicum was at Children's Alliance in Lancaster, and basically what we do is we work with, the majority is children and youth and police officers in the area of Lancaster and like some other areas to basically do forensic interviews for minors who've been sexually abused. So they have there is a training that they have to go through for doing forensic interviews. And it's just basically gathering information about their abuse without asking leading questions. So basically the children have to like bring up the abuse before we can like ask about it. And we try to get the most information possible about what happened so that they can then work with the child and hopefully arrest and convict the perpetrator. And like the way they do the training, basically because especially with kids, it's supposed to create the least amount of trauma and then like get the most amount of information. So like if the kid doesn't want to talk about it initially, like they'll ask other questions and then like kind of revisit the topic that's at hand. They also do medical interviews, which I was able to observe, and they have like medical staff on hand, and they basically just they look to make sure that the children's body's okay, and then they do like look at their private parts and take pictures of that just to make sure there's no like other evidence there. For me, I didn't like the medical evaluations. I thought they were like, as a kid, that would be so traumatizing to me. Like I would just feel so invaded to like for them to do that. But that's part of the process. And then they do also have a non-offending parent group, which I wasn't able to observe because they did it once a week. But basically, it's just like a psychological education class or program for non-offending caregivers, and it I think gives them like provides them coping skills. It's just like a training basically. So what I was able to, I observed the medical interviews and the forensic interviews, and we also did like a small intake process, but it wasn't extensive. It was just gathering basic information. Impact on learning. I was able to see how like you can gather information out of clients, especially like with sensitive subjects. That is non-traumatizing and without asking leading questions. I was able to see like how you collaborate with other professionals because it is like a contracted service with children and youth basically. So that was like a big part of it, is working with the police and working with children and youth. And then also like how they have to build rapport in such a short amount of time, and then also client self-determination. Like if the kid doesn't want to do the interview or doesn't want to talk about it, like we stop the interview, which I think is like really healthy and whatnot. So that was Children's Alliance.
So a couple questions, and you can feel free to ask more questions. Can you tell a little bit about the intake process, how they do that with
Sure.
the smart boards?
So initially when the family comes, the door is locked actually, so the door is always locked so nobody can come in and out because it is like a super sensitive subject and whatnot. They don't want the families or the children to be like, feel like embarrassed or shamed for it. So Christina, who's like the person I mostly followed, would go downstairs and she would just explain to the family and the kids like how it happened. They called it the talking room, and like the talking lady would come down and just talk with them about whatever. And they would explain the smart board to the kids, and then if they wanted to go back and see the room before the interview started, they would take them back. So then the interviewer would come down and like take the kid back to be interviewed. All the interviews are taped and recorded, so the police, children, and youth, and then like I would watch them from upstairs because it is closed circuit. And then Christina would go down and she would just it was basically just like a list of questions like medical history, if the child has an IEP, if there is like family history of suicide, that kind of thing. Super basic questions, nothing in depth. It was just basically gathering the answers to put into the system. It wasn't like I feel like how we learned, it was more generic than that, because the other thing is like it is a one-time interaction. It's not like extended services, so we only see the family once.
Good. Any other questions for more?
Was the medical evaluations, did a doctor come for that?
I think they have like a nurse. They have a couple of different people that come. I think mine was like the person that was there when I was there was a nurse practitioner, I think. But yeah.
So how
Dr.
did,
Kathy Hochschauer usually does those. She
Yeah.
filters in. She's been doing it for years.
The person that was always there was her name was Morgan. That's funny, but yeah, they have like a few different people that come in, so I don't.
So the LGH interns rotate through.
so how did you watch that? Like,
So when we do them, like there's always a person, like there's always two people in the room just for safety and accountability, I guess. And so there's always just two people in there. That was just their protocol. So if they needed somebody to like sit in, that's how I did it. But
so the kids were like getting completely examined like right there in front of you?
yeah, they did like have a sheet for them, and like I didn't look.
Yeah.
But like yeah, they do. And that's also I just wouldn't like that. But
Why is that so intrusive compared to the questions? Like, I just feel
Because
like
it's like-
such a contrast.
oh, well, it's like they have
You
to
yeah.
like.
So the way that the forensic interviewing is you have to make sure that you have medical evidence in order to take that for prosecution. If you have medical evidence, then you are able to say that without a doubt this individual was abused, because most children are not. They do have some medical evidence if they were definitely abused. An object inserted or whatever that would be. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the way that you look at it is we didn't get a lot of medical confirmations, but children still need to go through that as part of the process. Once in a while, you get a horrendous sexual abuse situation, and there's medical evidence to support the penetration or perpetration.
And one thing I will add is the way they explained it to me, like like Kurt said, like most of them don't have like any physical signs, and then that's just like reaffirming them that they're like normal and like everything is as it should be. They're not different from other kids, like that kind of
They may
thing.
feel that because of what they've gone through,
Right.
that someone touched them inappropriately and therefore they're damaged. So it is a normalizing situation.
Right, and the girl I watched, like whenever it was done, she would be like, your body looks completely normal, and just like reaffirming that. So
Confirmed a passion in yours with this population, this type of social work?
I really liked this because sexual abuse has always been I've always been passionate about that, especially with kids. I was talking to Christina, who was also in children and youth, and she likes just the one-time interaction. I don't know if I would like it or not because I haven't seen extended involvement. But yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was really interesting. It's definitely not for everybody, especially if you're super sensitive. You can't really get attached, but yeah. I mean, it is really sad, but that's just the reality of the situation. So.
Good. Thank you. Lorraine?
So my practicum was at Community Action Program, CAP. Actually, they just changed the name to Community Action Partnership, which I really like, but they didn't get new brochures, so these ones will do. But their slogan is helping people, changing lives. And so one thing that is unique about CAP is they have so many different programs that are really able to cater to each of the different things. So the way that they're divided is they're divided into 4 things: child development and education, and that's where they have their childcare, and they have Head Start and Family Center. So all these services are basically care for children for especially low-income families. So with Head Start, that's a free pre-kindergarten, so basically a preschool. So kids have somewhere to go if their parents are working and they're low income and they don't really have the time to be stimulating their kids intellectually and things like that. And then childcare, so CAP provides a daycare for kids to go so parents can work, because a lot of the parents, both of them have to work, so their kids have nowhere to go. And it's really affordable, and they do a great job with that. And then the Family Center is neat because they go into different homes and they teach parents how to be parents and like how to help their kids learn and grow. So that's the child development area. And then they have household stability, which is Atlas, childcare, information, outreach, and the senior center. So Atlas is kind of, I guess it's the most similar to what we've been learning about with casework, where it's basically helping people get out of poverty in their own way, which I thought that was really neat. But one thing that I didn't really understand about the Atlas initiative is they don't have like a set process. They kind of just get a mentor and they get to come to the mentor whenever they want. So I wasn't sure how that worked with like accountability and goal setting because there was no like straight like 7-plan process change to go through. It was just like, okay, you can come to your mentor when you need help paying your rent, and then they can give you suggestions. But I did like how all of their mentors are people in the community. So one thing that CAP does a great job with is really involving the community. It's not like there's just these people who are professionals and that they're helping low-income people. It's a lot of volunteers, a lot of people who just are involved and want to come alongside of someone. So that's really neat about CAP. Child care information services, they provide all the information and like basically they help people get all these child development services. Outreach helps with PP&L, utilities and stuff like that. So when I shadowed the woman who works for Outreach, she was doing a lot of paperwork. People were just coming in and filling out applications. So that was kind of, yeah, she just did a lot of paperwork and applications. The senior center I spent a lot of time at. That was really neat. They provide a lunch for them every day, and they provide just a place where people can come and socialize. They do like events, they bring people in. So that was really nice. And then they have health and nutrition. So in that is WIC, Food Distribution Center, and the Nutrition Education Program. And I think WIC is probably the biggest program, the most well-known program out of all of them, because, I mean, most everyone knows about WIC. So with WIC, they have most people coming in and applying for things or getting nutritional education. So the person that I shadowed, she was a nutritionist, and she was helping either pregnant women, give them like ideas on what they can eat that's like iron rich or different things, or they're helping moms with their kids provide like good food that they can purchase through like food stamps and checks and stuff. So that was really cool. And then the Food Distribution Center is a food pantry for people to come. And then also they have public safety and violence prevention, which is DVS. I couldn't go with them because of how confidential it was. They just, I don't know, they didn't really want me to go, which is fine. But they have like the 24-hour hotline and things like that for domestic violence. And it was interesting because a lot of the people that I saw, especially because women and children are so vulnerable, so a lot of the cases, even when I was in outreach or WIC, a lot of them needed DVS services. So it's interesting to me to see how all of these are separated, but yet most of the clients that I saw were involved. Like if they were in Family Center, they also were at WIC, or if they were involved in WIC, then they had Head Start and outreach. So it's neat how there were so many programs, but a lot of the clients needed a lot of the services. So I saw a lot of interaction with the clients, especially at places like the senior center and the child care area. I mean, I would see supervisors and managers putting on a hairnet and going and serving food to the kids or food to the senior centers. So that was one thing that I really appreciated, is that everyone was kind of, there was no like system of authority. Everyone was just there to help people and care for people. Even if you were a supervisor, you were still mingling with all of the different clients, and they all know them by name. Like they know about the kids and what they like and what they don't like. They call them by name, they give them hugs. Or at the senior center, they know if they were a veteran, they know their life story, they know kind of their background. So that was really neat for me to see, kind of a governmental job, but at the same time people coming together and really caring for one another and knowing people by name. That was really interesting. And then another thing that I saw was they work together with their coworkers to get things done. So I was most recently at the childcare, and in the one class that I shadowed, they had 21-year-olds, and they only had 3 teachers. So it was crazy because they have all these regulations, like the kids have to wash their hands after coming in from outside, but at the same time, kids are running around everywhere, and then some of them needed their diaper changed. And so I noticed how they communicated with each other so well, and they made it known what they were doing. They asked another person for help when they needed it, or they were willing to, like, not tell each other what to do, but say, like, okay, I'm going to do this, can you do that? So that was really neat to see that, working together with the coworkers, and also just interacting with the clients. And I appreciated how diverse the population was, especially because they service a lot of people within Lancaster City, which is so diverse. And they really do a good job of being sensitive to that. So when I was in the family center, we went into a home and they were Muslim, and so we took our shoes off. And the social worker, she reminded me of that, like, before we went in the house. She's like, make sure you take your shoes off. That's what we do. So yeah, it's a very diverse population that they're working with. In the Head Start preschool classrooms, there was, I think I saw maybe 1 or 2 white kids, and they had, in one classroom alone, they had 7 languages spoken. So I was just blown away by the flexibility that they had and the patience that they had to say a word in Spanish or say a word in Chinese, or the different languages that were spoken, or just to have patience on the kids, because it is so confusing being in a class with, like, majority English speaking, but then going back home. So yeah, they do a great job. It's a lot of work, and I saw that a lot of the employees were overwhelmed, but they still did a really good job of functioning under a lot of pressure and being able to communicate and work together with their coworkers, but at the same time making every individual known by their name and cared for. So that was Kat.
What did you learn about yourself
Oh.
through this experience?
Wow. I learned that there's always different ways that things can be done. And so it's good, like, that's a good thing, and I think that different people have different skills and different, like, programs have different ways of doing things, and you should definitely be flexible. But at the same time, one thing that I saw that CAP lacked was, like, I don't know how to say this, they lacked the overall vision together, because there was so many different clients needing everything. Like, they would ask me about Atlas, or, like, they'd be like, so what's going on with this? Like, I heard this program's happening, what is it? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm just, like, coming here and shadowing. So I see the value in having, like, a unified organization, but at the same time, there's definitely different ways that things can be run, and so, like, people have their own systems for a reason. And
so you should be familiar with community action programs. They're in very many communities. So this is something that as a social worker you will use. So this is a good flyer to be able to keep and store that for when you have your internship. Good. Any other questions for Lauren? Karen?
I haven't been in my practicum in a couple weeks. I'm finishing my hours this week. So I think there's things like, but I need you guys on instead. So I was at Lancaster County Children and Youth Agency this semester, which was an incredible experience. Definitely hard in some ways, but definitely very growing, and, like, I feel like my perspective changed so much. So basically, like, it's a government agency that provides mandated services for children and youth within Lancaster County. They don't go beyond the county unless like for special cases and stuff like that. But the agency investigates all reports that come in. So people call like child hotline, or they can call like the agency directly, and they can report abuse or neglect. And through those, all of the cases that come in need to be looked into. And each one that comes in has a different like time too, depending on like how urgent they are, or how like serious of a case it is. Like you could go a couple days, or you might need to go all that day, depending on what it is. So yeah, all the cases are looked into. A lot. So they have like multiple different like sections within children and youth. So one of the first things I was able to observe was intake. So all the calls that were coming in, they made a file for everything. Whenever a file comes in, like you have to like document everything. Like if it's not documented, it doesn't count, or like it never happened. So like every conversation, every phone call, every email sent, like everything has to be documented. So that was really cool just to kind of see that process and everything. I definitely would not want to do that just because it's just so much desk work. And then I was also able to observe both the neglect unit and the abuse unit, and they're very like separated. I don't know if it was like that whenever you were there, but like they were very like separated. So neglect deals with just like general, it's called GPS, General Protective Services, which falls more into the neglect. Neglect can be anything from environmental neglect for like dirty houses or like mold growing, to medical neglect. I know one of our cases, the little baby was having seizures, and like the parents weren't doing anything about that, and so like they had to take away the child and everything. So it could mean an array of different things, along with just physical neglect too. Abuse can be anything from sexual and mental and emotional abuse to physical also. So all those things go into children and youth. Then they also have a family support system too, which was really neat to kind of see. I was able to go out on the field for that one, but throughout that one, it's more of a long-term care, so children and youth refer to like the family support. I wasn't able to do any of like the actual assessments, which I'm kind of hoping I'll get to see in these next couple of days here as I finish my hours, but I was able to see 2 placements. One of them was going in and taking a child directly from the home whenever the parents were there. And then another one of them was going to the school, picking up the child from school, and then taking him to his foster home. So it was a very unique experience, and like there's so many mixed things that come from that, because you're like removing a child from anything that they've ever known, but you also have the comfort of knowing that they don't have to go back to that environment that night. So like that abuse won't be happening that night. So it's definitely, it was a very different experience. There was so much paperwork behind everything, like a lot of court dates. I was able to sit into the courtroom the one day, and it was really cool. Just to, like, sometimes the children will speak for themselves. Like the social worker will stand up and like they'll present the case and everything, and then the judge will say, okay, is there anything that the child wants to say? And so we had this one kid that was able to like speak for himself and like say like how much he's grown, because he was like fading out of the system and stuff like that. And so it was just really cool to see just as the judge's reactions to what the child was saying and everything, and it was a really cool experience. So within child welfare, they are connected to a lot of different organizations like WCA, WIC, those kind of things. So they connect a lot. Like they're basically the first couple weeks, like they do all the intake, and they kind of pass off to the next part within their journey. So they can open cases and close cases, or they can open cases and then transfer them to long care. That's pretty much it.
So, your overall assessment, could you see yourself being a child welfare worker?
I don't think right away. I feel like I would want to get more experience before I went straight into children and youth. But I really did enjoy it a lot. It was just cool to be able to meet some of the kids and be able to kind of hear some of their stories and read through case files of stories that have happened in the past and stuff. So I definitely enjoyed it. Did I absolutely fall in love with it? No, but I could definitely see myself doing this.
Good. Any other questions for Erin? All right, Lauren?
Okay, so mine doesn't really have their own brochure, so I just kind of brought something from the office that I was involved in and that the social worker was involved in. Okay, so I was at Shriver Pediatric Rehab Center, and this was a really good experience for me because I have a passion with people for disabilities, and so this is where children with disabilities go to get therapy, so that was really fun for me to see. The first part of my internship, I didn't really get to see a lot of the social work because I was getting a broad overview of what Shriver was, so I can tell you pretty much a lot about Shriver, but so they basically have 3 therapies, occupational, physical, and speech. And then on top of that, they have a daycare center, kind of like CAP, and then they have a school structured one, kind of. I don't remember what they call it, but it's pretty much where the daycare can be for any kids, and then the specialized one is for kids with just disabilities. And that was a really cool experience for me because I walked in and some of the kids you didn't even know they had disabilities. But yeah, so the one thing that I did mostly was I observed all of those areas. So I got to see all the therapies, I got to see the daycare, I got to see everything like that. And then I was able to see it all put together. So the intake is very, very brief, unlike the one that we do here. Jen gets a phone call, who's my supervisor and social worker there. And she calls them back or whatever, and they basically request to go there. And I'd ask her the question, do you ever get mandated services? Because I saw a kid in PT who, he was there, obviously alone because they don't really have any mandated ones, but he was there due to abuse. His father abused him, and so he had to have brain surgery, and after the brain surgery, everything had to be rewired. He didn't know how to walk and things like that, so they worked with him through that. But yeah, so they don't have mandated clients, which was kind of interesting for me. So basically when they call, they just fill out a form for what service they want to use, and then they have to have a script from a doctor, which means a prescription type thing, and if they don't have that, they can't receive services, which is one thing that kind of was upsetting to me because, I don't know, some people may want to do that, and the doctors may think, oh, they may not need it or whatever. But yeah, so after they get the script, then Jen puts it in, and they pretty much can start receiving services. Yeah, so one thing that I really liked about this was seeing in full effect how advocacy has its importance. We talk about it in class all the time, but being able to see it firsthand, a lot of these kids don't have people that can speak for them, whether it be because they can't talk or because they're too young or have the disabilities. There was one kid who came from Hershey Medical, and he could take his first steps after people advocated for him, and I really liked how Jen worked along with a therapist. It was a mutual effort to try to get services for them, whether it be they needed a walker, whether they needed more services at the school. There's just a big community feel, and I really liked that part of it. So yeah, that's kind of Shriver.
So just to build on something that she said is the closest that you might be able to get to a mandated service is if child welfare is involved and requires the student or the child to get therapies as part of a treatment plan because the court had ordered it. So the child, all the children coming into the foster care system will have a lawyer assigned to them, and the lawyer may request that they get those services. But it is a client-centered. If clients don't want it, they don't have to participate in it. So it's very different from a child welfare model, and it's all voluntary services. And you'll see that next semester in early intervention as well.
One thing too, I forgot to mention that really blew my mind. If they have 2 no-shows, so they have appointments that they have to make each week, and those are scheduled out in advance. And if they have 2 no-shows, they're kicked out. So that's kind of something too that's I understand why it's there because then people probably take advantage of that, but at the same time, situations come up and things like
So does a no-show like mean they didn't, like, does that mean they just didn't show up without calling? Like, what if they
Mhm.
call?
that. If they
Is
call,
that
they're
different?
usually okay, but sometimes if they call too much, say in canceling, they count it as a no-show too.
Okay.
So it just depends on the situation, but Jen had a lot of people who they got kicked out and they would call back and like, oh, I'm so sorry, but I actually had this, and would try to make excuses, and so she kind of had to put her foot down, which was hard, but.
Why do you think, what would be the benefit of a requirement to get a script from a doctor? In what way would that make sense?
I think because obviously physical therapy, all the therapies are really expensive. So if the doctor doesn't require it, if he doesn't think that there's going to be potential for that, it's kind of like a pointless.
Yeah, so the family doesn't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
It used to be those services that you could voluntarily admit to that or consent to that, and then they would have to go through what's called liability and see what your commitment to pay for those services. But now they automatically just said, what is your insurance? You need a prescription from your doctor. And if your doctor deems it medically eligible, then insurance would approve that, because it could be very costly.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just cover that base by just getting a prescription. And doctors will, most doctors will. And you'll see next semester that the service coordinator sometimes has to speak to the doctor about getting a prescription for a certain child too, to sort of massage that process for them. Yeah, good. You know, I don't know how you're doing with electives, but you know we're going to be offering a disabilities course,
No.
elective, next fall of
Seriously?
2017. Yeah.
You can just audit that. Then you don't have to actually
Sure.
do
Yeah.
the work.
All right, any other questions for Lauren? All right, Christina.
So I've been doing my practicum at Families United Network, otherwise known as FUN, and their mission is to provide reunification or permanency for children who have come into the foster care system due to abuse and neglect or just other issues that may arise within their families. They provide many different services for these kids. They have kinship care, which is the kids will go and live with another blood relative. They have emergency foster care for, last minute children that are called in by the county. They have independent living group homes, which I thought was really interesting and didn't know that they provided. It's a home for girls, I think, like 12 to 18.
I forget the name of that.
I don't know the name either. I heard her mention it once during the orientation. But they provide independent living for these girls, and you teach them how to shop, how to budget, just how to live on their own instead of going into the foster care system at the age that they are. They also provide home studies and daycare services and other such. They service people of many different races and creeds, and they don't, stereotype any of these people. They told me of a same-sex couple that they were working with as foster parents, and I saw many different races and ethnicities. They also service children that have experienced trauma, as well as abuse, children that have different mental issues such as reactive attachment disorder, and medically fragile children. I was able to go to a home of one foster mother who takes in medically fragile children, and there's one little girl, she was about 1 or 2, and she had multiple broken bones. She was severely undernourished, and she can't sit up on her own, she can't walk, she can barely eat. It was sad to see, but they said that the point she's at now is amazing compared to when she came into the system. Another sad thing that I saw was out of the many homes that I went to, there was only maybe 1 or 2 that were on track to being reunified with their original families. The rest were on track to adoption due to the parents not fulfilling their goals that had been set, or just, remaining out of contact or not working to improve their situation. But the foster family, I was able to go on many different home visits, as well as go to an orientation for the foster families and learn more about fun, as well as some of the roles that the foster parents have to play. I also was introduced to a new law that was passed called Reasonable and Prudent Parenting, and that allows foster parents to now have more freedom with what they do with the children when they come into the system. And it allows them to have more of a normal living situation versus being an outsider. Like, they're allowed to go on vacations without getting extensive permission. They're allowed to go over to grandparents' houses, sleepovers, be in family pictures, just stuff that any normal kid would do. They've now passed a law that allows foster parents to make those decisions with some supervision from the social workers at FUN. It was interesting for me to see that fostering is not, a middle class thing. Like, I went to many different homes, none of them were the same. Like, there was one, I think she was a county worker that became a foster parent, and she, middle class home. And then there were some other families that were in more low income areas, but they still provided great services for their kids. And, just the different services that FUN works to refer their kids to. They require all of their kids to, attend counseling, see psychiatrists, psychologists, just to work through some of their issues. One thing that was brought up when I was talking to some of them yesterday was how they have problems when it comes to medication, because they really want to work on what causes the issues that the children are experiencing, but sometimes they don't have a choice and they have to go with what takes care of the immediate symptoms. So that's a problem that they've run into, but they work really hard to, bring the children to a place of safety and nurturing, and, just provide them with a great home.
Not a faith-based organization, but there were Christians there that you encountered. Did you get to shadow Tina at all?
I did not.
Okay, Tina was my intern many years ago. We work closely with Families United Network. After being in child welfare, now next semester we're going to be with the elderly population. The system's pretty complicated, isn't it? Just your short time there, it's really complicated and complex to navigate.
They have a lot of different avenues that they have to talk with, because they work with the county as well as other organizations, so they have to go through releases of information, and they have real problems staying in contact with the county, because they said the county's just so overworked that they can't focus on all of the cases properly, which sometimes leads to children being taken out of foster homes and replaced, or being placed back with their family when it might not be the best situation. So they said that's probably one of the hardest things for them, is working with the county.
So a child would go to Families United Network when the county could not find a match in a foster home within their own network of foster homes. So Families United Network is a contracted agency, and they might have kids from Dauphin County, from Berks County, from Adams County, from Lancaster County, and a lot of them all over. And so you might have one foster family with a kid from Lancaster County and Lebanon County, and they have to do visits in different places, whereas a county foster parent would only have kids from that county. They would only do visits at that county. So the FUN worker, the Family United Networker, that their family would have a caseworker, and then they would also have a county caseworker working side by side, whereas if it's a county foster home, they only have the county worker there.
So the kids tend to be a little bit more complicated because you can't find them a home in a traditional foster family. So they have a higher level of support for their foster families. It's not really a fun job being a foster parent, knowing what they have to do and how little reimbursement they get for that. Good. Any other questions for Christina?
Do they have any services for the boys at all? Because I know you were saying like housing for the girls and like
They-
independent living.
They didn't have anything for boys that I heard of or that I can remember.
I'm just not able to recall that name. I want to say it's Maddow's house, but it's not.
I think it's
So-
a newer thing that
This
they.
is only for women?
No, it's for kids that are in care. So the independent living kids would be kids that were in the custody of the agency, but needing independent living skills to transition into independence upon leaving foster care.
Yeah, and this is for more of the older girls, like middle school and up. And I think it's more of a newer program because they have one house and I think they just opened another one. So, still working on
All right, good. Go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, so I did my practicum at Milagro House, which is an education-based housing facility for mothers facing homelessness. There are 2 homes. The one that I shadowed at was on South Christian Street, and it is the GED program or high school diploma program. So the women who stayed at that house did not graduate high school. So they stayed at that house, and then there's a house on West Chestnut Street for secondary, post-secondary education, where oftentimes some mothers will start at the GED house and then go over to the other house if they're seeking higher education. They provide housing under the impression that the women are motivated to the education program. We had while I was there, we had a lot of calls for people wanting housing, people who are homeless, but we aren't a emergency shelter. And so oftentimes that's what they would tell me to say on the phone. I answered the phone and people would be looking for someone for immediate housing because they're homeless, but that's not what we do. And there's an interview process for women to be accepted into the house. So they have to first apply and then come and interview. They have to take an initial academic test to see what their scores are and what level education they're scoring at. So they had to do that first. There's a lot of different services with CAP that a lot of the residents use, WIC, CCIS, all of those things. So there was a lot of, when I would observe my supervisor, she would be in contact with a lot of those places, confirming appointments and just making sure that everything was taken care of. A lot of interaction with the court system as well. Some of the mothers had fines or like different things that they needed to go to court for, and so she would be advocating for them. When I know one time they didn't get the notice until after the court date or on the court date or something like that, so she had to call and confirm that like one of our clients didn't just skip the court date. She never was aware of it, and so I watched that happen. Every week when I come in, they kind of debrief me on what had been happening in the house throughout the week since I left, which I really appreciated because they didn't need to do that. They just felt like it would be a good educational process to hear about and just to kind of talk through. So I appreciated them doing that. They had staff meetings every week. Because there's so many different entities to it, they would come together every week to talk about different things within both of the houses. So if
somebody had a concern about one of the residents, it was brought up at staff meeting and they would collaborate about how they should move forward with it. I know the most recent thing that they've been talking about is we have a younger pregnant mom who is suffering from bulimia. So they had a lot of concern for her and her being able to be in the house and in the education program because she wasn't able to sit through the classes. She wasn't able to concentrate and things like that. So they got together to see how they could provide services for her. And it was tough to find a specialist for her with the insurance that she had, because she was on Medicaid. So it was a couple of weeks that they had to search for someone. They finally found someone to provide for her. Another thing, something that I learned from Milagro House, a lot of things I learned from Milagro House, but one thing specifically was the need to keep the strengths perspective with this demographic especially, because they can become so overwhelmed by their situations that you not using strength-based speech towards them can be detrimental to their success. One thing that is seen as criticizing to them can backtrack them, can stump them, because they already have such low self-esteem and low views of themselves. So that was hard to see when things like that came up, when a mother failed one of her tests, one of her GED tests, and it would be crushing for her, because then it would be a spiral into like, I can't even help my kids with their homework, like I want to be an example to them, but I can't do this. And so like, just being affirmative in that they are able to do these things, and that this doesn't define them. Like the one bad test doesn't define who they are, and like just affirming that they are in this program because they are motivated to get a higher education.